Okay, perfect. Well, welcome everybody. So my name's Gabby. Thanks for joining our Kimberley webinar today. So I'm part of the sales team here at Coral Expeditions based in Cairns, where our head office is. We also have Quentin on the screen today. So Quentin is joining us from cold South Australia. Hi, Quentin.
Hi there.
And he's going to be letting us know about all the amazing places in the Kimberley a bit later on in the webinar. So we are recording the webinar today, and everybody that has registered and is watching today, you will receive a recorded version, which will be sent out to you after this presentation today. We will also have a question and answer section at the end. So if you do have any questions, please remember them, and then you'll have a section at the end where you can ask any of those questions. All right, let's get started. So today's focus obviously is the Kimberley. So it's taking you on a journey with Coral Expeditions to give you an insight of the Kimberley's vast and rugged coastline, which has been shaped by the powerful forces of nature. So the Kimberley is steeped in ancient cultures and is one of the most beautiful and remote wilderness areas in the world. So for those of you that are new to Coral Expeditions, we have operated for 40 years and we're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. But always with a single purpose, which is to take small groups of like-minded explorers like yourselves to remote places with expert guides, warm Australian hospitality and guidance. So to begin our Kimberley journey today, I'm going to give you a sneak peek at what you can expect from one of our experienced expeditions in the remote wilderness of the Kimberley region. So enjoy this video. Okay, I believe that we're having some sound issues. So if you don't have the sound, don't worry. That was just some background music. But that's basically just 2 minutes of what you can experience on one of our 10-night Kimberley cruises. And you can really see why the Kimberley is such a bucket list trip of a lifetime experience, which will leave you with memories you'll have forever and ever. So in the 90s, Coral Expeditions, we completed our first Kimberley voyage as the first ever expedition cruise operator to explore the region. So out of the 40 years Coral Expeditions have been operating, 30 of those years we have been exploring the Kimberley. So being one of the original Australian flagged expedition pioneers, this has actually allowed us to curate the perfect expedition cruise the Kimberley has to offer. So our expert guides and our crew, they will share their expansive knowledge and passion for this region from their many, many years of experience. So in the Kimberley, knowledge and experience is everything, given the huge tidal flows in the area and the fact that much of the region is so uncharted and so remote, this is really important. So all our vessels, they are Australian flagged, which means we spend more time in the Kimberley, have the best local knowledge, and we don't need to spend your valuable time travelling into international waters like many other foreign lines do. So all our vessels, they are operated with our Australian and New Zealand crew, and you will get to experience the ultimate warm Australian hospitality throughout your voyage. So whether this is enjoying an ice cold beer or a glass of sparkling on Veranda Beach, which you can see in this image, with sand in between your toes, or it might be on board. So on board our vessels, we do encourage a natural Australian style service with an open interactions between our guest and our crew. So it's one where you can watch your dinner being prepared in our open galleys by our amazing chefs on board. Or you could go up into the bridge and have a chat with the captain and the crew up there, or just simply sit back and relax in the company of experienced guest lecturers like Quentin and other like-minded travellers. So it is a true expedition style trip. So our 3 Australian flagged expedition ships, they are designed for the Kimberley region and expedition cruising. So they feature beautiful wraparound decks, private balconies on some of our staterooms, and plenty of outdoor dining spaces so you can enjoy those famous Kimberley sunsets. The shallow drafts and high movability of our purpose-designed expedition ships, it lets us get you closer on coastal adventures to explore the sheltered bays and hidden inlets inaccessible to those larger ships. Okay, so Coral Discoverer. This is our yacht-like vessel, which has 36 staterooms and a maximum of 72 passengers. So Coral Discoverer, she's now 15 years old, just undergone a refurb in late December last year. But this ship is loved by our loyal regulars for intimate feel and those smaller numbers as well. So CD is domestic focused, doing Kimberley, Cape York and Arnhem Land and Torres Strait trips, the Great Barrier Reef, as well as the Tasmania season each year as well. Okay, so Coral Adventurer started operating in 2019, has 60 staterooms and a maximum of 120 passengers on this ship. So a very similar design across all 3 of our ships. They are built for expedition cruising. There's 2 large 55 square metre suites on board this ship and a range of lovely indoor and outdoor dining and seating areas to enjoy the views and read a book and relax. Outside the Kimberley season, Coral Adventurer is deployed to Papua New Guinea, Japan, Philippines and other parts of the west coast of Australia. Okay, so Coral Geographer is the sister ship to Adventurer, which we were just looking at. So our newest ship of the fleet, delivered in March 2021. So again, 60 staterooms on board Geographer with a maximum of 120 passengers. Now, on our 2 larger ships, we do have an internal lift that goes all the way up to the Vista bar on the top deck, but please still be mindful that you do need to have a reasonable level of mobility and be able to use the stairs in case of an emergency. So when not in the Kimberley, Coral Geographer does trips to the small islands of the Indian Ocean, Western Australia coast as well, South Australia, New Zealand, and our new trip to the sub-Antarctic. So as mentioned before, on all our ships, every room is outward facing, so you're never going to miss out on the view. But keep in mind, it really doesn't matter which side of the ship that you're on. We do most of our steaming at night, and you really don't spend too much of your time in your room. You'll be so busy that you'll always be out of your room, or you'll be taking out those beautiful views on one of our al fresco areas and reading a book and relaxing. So all our ships are built for subtropical climates. And as I said, they've got lots of outdoor areas to enjoy. All of our rooms are twin share, and we do have the option for solo travellers as well. Now, these here are our Explorer tenders, which really are, I think, one of the highlights of our company. So with the Explorer tenders, this is what we do majority of our shore excursions on. They are purpose-built for our shore excursions, and they are just loaded onto the back deck of our ships, and you can simply just step onto them via a ramp. They'll be lowered down to the water and you're off on your excursion under 5 minutes. And it's the same when you come back on board as well. So really easy access. They do have a specialised hydraulic launching system which makes that work, okay? So they can seat full ship's capacity, which is 72 in each one. So on Discoverer, which is our smallest ship, we only have one of these, and on the larger ship we have two. So again, everybody can go at once. All open air, so you don't miss out on the views, and we do have clears that come down the sides in case you do have bad weather. Comfy seats as well, the roof for weather protection, and there is an onboard toilet as well. And then we do come across on the Kimberley a lot of wet and dry landings where there's just a ramp at the front of the tender, so you can simply just go straight down onto the sand or the water. And we do recommend you bring some sort of footwear that you don't mind getting wet. So whether it's some hiking sandals or reef shoes, they're great for that. And there is a full audio equipment on board as well, so you don't miss out on anything that our expedition team is saying or our guest lecturers. You'll get a very clear commentary along the way. Now, some of the spots we do transfer you over if you'd like to go into our Zodiacs. So our Zodiac inflatables take smaller numbers, but it's just another way to get you up and closer to nature. So like in one of these images here, you can see the Lassipede Islands. So you can get up close and see the bird life there. Lots of sea turtles, rays, plenty of wildlife in this area. And then you can also see the other image is near Horizontal Falls. So there's lots of tawny sharks that like to come and say hi around there. And this is a great way to get up and close to them in the Zodiacs. So Coral Expeditions, we were one of the first cruise operators to employ interpretive guides on our cruises, which is a tradition that we still continue today. And each trip includes a mix of our full-time guest lecturers who join the expedition team and our special guest lecturers who are chosen for their specific knowledge on that area that we're visiting. So they immerse our guests on the unique wildlife in the environments that we're visiting, and this is what expedition cruising is about. So having guided expeditions in the region for over 3 decades now, we sure know the nooks and crannies that a lot of others don't. And our expedition team provide local expertise with a strong understanding of the unique landscapes, flora and fauna and Indigenous cultures of the regions that we're visiting. And our passionate expedition leaders are on board and they take our guests on every excursion. So we don't hand over to land-based tour companies. We focus on more time ashore with two shore excursions daily wherever possible. And the shore excursion generally have 2 options depending where we are. And this might vary from an easy coastal flat beach walk to something that might be a bit more challenging, up some rocks, a bit of rock scrambling or a hike on uneven ground to a point of interest or some rock art. In the Kimberley, though, you'll find there isn't a whole deal of walking. It's quite short. I think the most that we walk is about a little over 1 kilometre, and that's on flat surface. So there's always something for everybody though. Okay, so I'm about to hand over to Quentin, and Quentin's going to just introduce himself and tell you a bit about him, and then we're going to cover all the main icons of the Kimberley. So over to you, Quentin. Are you still there, Quentin?
I think I am now.
Yes, good.
You got me now? Okay.
Yes.
So I was just saying that I'm talking from Kangaroo Island today. So this is where I live, but it's lovely to see the warm sunshine in the Kimberley on these images. So I'm getting quite homesick for the north. But I'm a writer and photographer, and believe it or not, I've been travelling to the Kimberley since 1990. So even before Coral Expeditions got there. And I travelled the coast and worked on a book about the Kimberley. And it's been a great feature of my life. And I work with Coral down south here in South Australia and Tasmania. So got the best of both worlds, really. But these trips into the Kimberley, it never gets old for me. It's a very special part of Australia and really globally significant in terms of the wildness of the coastline and the cultural history that's attached to this whole world. So it's a tremendous experience. There's not one single highlight, it's just every day there's some great things to enjoy. And it's a real voyage of discovery for a lot of Australians to see this very big part of the continent, which up until recently, relatively recently, was not very well known. So it's been a great feature of the last 30 years or so that Coral's put the work into getting people here.
Yeah, great. So we're going to cover just briefly, we've got 3 itineraries that visit the Kimberley region. So on the screen here, you can see our Kimberley cruise, which is 10 nights and it departs Darwin or Broome. And this one covers the main icons of the Kimberley, which Quentin is about to educate us on. We depart April through to September, and we're now coming into the whale season. Quentin and myself were lucky enough to be there 2 weeks ago, and I was very lucky to have Quentin as my guest lecturer. Very knowledgeable, Quentin, and weren't the waterfalls spectacular when we were there? And I believe they're still, from what we hear, in full force because it's been such a strong wet season. So hopefully, if you've got a trip upcoming in the next few weeks, you might be lucky enough to still get the full force of those waterfalls.
Yeah, no, now, it's a real feature.
Yeah. So we also have an art and culture of the Kimberley and Tiwi Islands. So this is a great one. It's a bit of a bonus, really, because you get the best of everything. So very similar itinerary to the 10-night Kimberley cruise. However, this itinerary is more focused on the arts and cultures of the Kimberley and the Tiwi Islands. So there's going to be opportunities to visit art centres on the Tiwi Islands where you can purchase traditional and contemporary art directly from the source, which is incredible, as well as our hand-selected guest lecturers who will share their knowledge on cultures and traditions of the local communities along the way. So this, as I said, this Kimberley itinerary, it really is an added bonus with getting to visit the Tiwi Islands as well as the main Kimberley icons. So again, 10-night trip between Darwin and Broome, departs August through to September, and this one is on board our Coral Discoverer, so you'll get that nice intimate feel. And then our third itinerary is the Kimberley icons, Ashmore Reef and the Rolly Shoals. So this one here, our third itinerary in this series, is 12 nights, so a little bit longer, departs again Darwin and Broome in September. So this itinerary is combining our classic 10-night itinerary with a visit as well to the spectacular Rolly Shoals Marine Park and Ashmore Reef. So this will give you a snorkeling opportunity if you wanted to snorkel, or diving is an optional extra. So you'll get to do this at some of the world's best marine parks, which are home to at least over 200 species of coral and over 600 species of fish, and many which are not found on other coral reefs. So that's pretty special. And this would be on board Coral Geographer or Adventurer, which are our larger vessels with a maximum of 120 guests on board. All right, Quentin, I'll hand back over to you and you can tell us about all these amazing special spots of the Kimberley.
Thanks very much, Gabby. Yes, and we're starting with one of the big ticket items in the Kimberley, which is the King George Falls, or Umari as it's known in the local language. And this is just a remarkable journey. The photographs never really do it justice, although this is a good shot. And we travel upriver about 14 kilometres up this amazing gorge with these 80-metre high cliffs that flank either side of the estuary. And the journey is as spectacular as the falls themselves. So it's a wonderful way, if you're travelling from Darwin, to get right into the Kimberley from almost day one. And you get to see the power of the geology. And then obviously during the wet season, these falls are really pumping with runoff from the plateau. And we come into the falls very close with our deep tenders, the explorers, and then the opportunity is there for guests who wish to get onto the Zodiacs, and we nose in even closer to the falls. And if you wish, you can have a little bit of a shower underneath the beautiful fresh water coming off the plateau. But it's an interesting place, both from a geological point of view, but we also see some wildlife here, often birds of prey who use the cliffs and the whole habitat here for their nesting and hunting. And occasionally we do see things like turtles and crocodiles in this big estuary. But it's just a wonderful introduction. We're on the tender for most of that, well, all of that journey up the gorge, and just, yeah, a lovely way to start. And as well as obviously the spectacular nature of the geology holds this tremendous history of occupation by Indigenous groups for over 50,000 years. And it's a really powerful part of the experience. So as well as the spectacular scenery, you've got this sense in which this has been a lived and loved landscape for such a long time. And the art that we see represents a great span of history over 15, maybe even 20,000 years of dated history for occupation here. And there's lots of storytelling that we can give you about the art, and a lot of mystery and intrigue as well. There's still lots of things we don't really know. And local cultures are a very big part of what we try to share with our guests as we're going along. And as part of our experience, we come into different locations where the opportunity exists for you to take a helicopter flight from one of the beaches that we use as a landing pad, and that takes you up to the Mitchell Falls, which is a world famous destination in the Kimberley, right on top of the plateau. And as well as getting the opportunity to walk around the falls, take some photographs and see the spectacle of these 3 tiers of waterfall, you also get a chance to have a bit of a swim in some fresh water at the top of the plateau there, and really see that kind of part of the Kimberley, which is quite different to some of the coastal areas that we go into. It's a very high rainfall area, and we see not so much the vegetation at the wet season time, but you can see the way that it would come alive during the wet when they get sort of 2 or 3 metres of rain there over the summer. But very visually spectacular. And the flight to the falls, which takes you through some of the spectacular coastline, is a real bonus as well, because you see some of the coastal shorelines that we travelled by ship from the air. So it's a real scenic wonder to photograph and enjoy.
And with this one, if you are interested in doing it, you can sign up on board. It doesn't need to be pre-booked, but it's truly worth every cent. It's absolutely incredible to see it by air and then go for a swim up at Mitchell Falls as well. And this is one of the great estuaries that we visit. So a feature of the Kimberley are these major rivers and estuaries and harbours, you know, some massive sheltered harbours, and associated with these big rivers and estuaries are these wonderful mangrove systems and extensive areas of mudflats. And we go into Porosis Creek, which is named after the estuarine crocodile, the Crocodilus porosus, and we take our explorers into some of these side creeks, and as well as just looking at the spectacular geology and the mangrove communities, the wonderful mangrove systems. We also get a chance here usually to see crocodiles, estuarine crocodiles, and all sorts of bird life. So lots of very colourful kingfishers, birds of prey like Brahminy kites, sea eagles, white-bellied sea eagles, and all sorts of things on the mud. Wonderful fiddler crabs and little mud skippers. So there's lots of little details as well as the big picture to enjoy. And this is a very special thing we do. And like all our excursions, because we've got these big tenders, we spend a good amount of time here. It's not just a few minutes. We're here for a good hour or two, and there's a real opportunity to explore some of the backwaters. So, and that's a feature of what Coral does with their Explorer tenders, is that time that you can spend as a group sharing the experience of these very difficult to reach places. Yeah. And Quentin, it's probably a good point on this one to pack your binoculars, isn't it? Because, for example, on our cruise, we saw a tiny little baby crocodile, which would be really hard to spot without binoculars. So that was, right. Yeah, great thing to pack in your bag.
It's a real highlight. So, yeah, binoculars are really important here for the birds, some of the smaller birds like the kingfishers. binoculars really help you. And there's lots of little things to see, you know, mangrove flowers, even some of the smaller crabs and things. A pair of binoculars is great. And if you're into photography, there's some great opportunities to get wildlife photos on these trips. And as you say, to see those little recent hatchling crocodiles was just really magic on the last trip. I've never seen one before in the wild like that. So that was a real bonus. We can't guarantee that on every trip, but you never know. We might see some more. But it was fortunate that we were able to spot that. And we've got a few people using that image that I took of those baby ones as a screensaver. So it is a bit of a famous crocodile now. And as we've been saying, the waterfalls are a real highlight. And even as we get later into the season, the King George Falls and King's Cascade are still running. It changes in terms of flow rate as we get later into the season, but there's still water coming down here right through until September. This is a spring-fed cascade and a very historic place in terms of the European exploration of the Kimberley, where Philip Parker King came here in 1820 and was amazed coming all the way up the river to find and hear this cascade before they even saw it. And they're able to enjoy the fresh water as we do. And what we do here, as well as having the opportunity to really see the whole spectacle of this wonderful terraced cascade, is again, we take the explorers in and we nose in carefully to the rock ledges there. And again, for those who feel like they want to get up close and personal, you can get your head underneath some of those little cascades and enjoy the kind of fresh, refreshing water that's coming off the plateau. So a real highlight. And again, often bird life here on top of the plateau. We often see cockatoos and corellas here. We often see smaller birds as well. So herons often around here. So there's always the opportunity for wildlife. And again, great to have a pair of binoculars. You never know what you might see. And continuing on the history side of it, so I mentioned Philip Parker King, and he becomes quite a hero of ours as we go along the coast. And we look at the whole environment of the Kimberley through various sort of windows, if you like. One is obviously the huge Indigenous history of the region, but the European explorers who came in here in the 1820s really give us another opportunity to see the world through their eyes and imagine what it was like to explore these waters in very small sailing vessels as part of the surveying of the coast. And here at Careening Bay, we visit this iconic boab, this wonderful tree, which we think is probably over 800 years old. And they inscribed the name of the vessel, the Mermaid, on this tree back in 1820. And for a lot of people who are interested in history and exploration, this is one of the great landmarks in Australia for that era of discovery. So a great opportunity for us to share. And this is where Philip Parker King put his small boat, the Mermaid, ashore to carry out some repairs. They beached the ship, which is always a pretty risky business, but they were fortunate to find this wonderful bay to do that work on the ship. And we, as well as seeing the tree here, we also do explore some of the vegetation and the beach itself. It's a wonderful natural place as well as being a real historical kind of landmark. So it's always a special moment to be here. And from one extreme to the other, we've gone from a beautiful coastal bay right offshore, about 30 kilometres offshore, to one of the icons of the Kimberley. We use that word a bit, but this is a true icon. One of the world's largest inshore reefs, 400 square kilometres of reef system. And this, David Attenborough rates it as one of the wonders of the world, the eighth wonder of the world, he called it. And we, again, use our explorers, and we have a good amount of time to experience this amazing reef with the high tides. As the tide drops, water is pouring off this huge flat surface of reef into these channels and gorge systems. And we get to see, again, a lot of bird life, a lot of herons, ospreys occasionally, terns, who are feasting on some of the marine life that is caught up in the pools and channels on top of the reef. And as well as that, we often see turtles in the shallows here. And from the Explorer, we can enjoy all of that. And the opportunity here exists also to use our Zodiacs. For those who wish, can get on board the Zodiacs, and we can tuck in even closer to the reef. So it is a very special place, and a lot of people find this their real highlight of the trip, because it's such an amazing sensation. Again, the photograph is interesting, but being there and listening to the water tumbling off this reef right through the whole time we're there is just very special. And another water-based activity we do is get you into Talbot Bay and this very famous set of narrows between the cliffs. Garrangadam is the indigenous name for it. Horizontal Falls is its sort of a better known name. And here we can take you through in the Zodiacs, and you see the real impact of water coming out with the tide from these big inlets. So at this end of the Kimberley, as we get further south, we have tides ranging up to 9, 10, 11 metre tides. And that water that's trapped inland in these big embayments, when it comes out of those embayments, it's rushing out in a big, big way. And we've been doing Zodiac trips through here for many, many decades now. And it's very safe, but it's also very exhilarating and exciting. I've got some great photos of Gabby on board the Zodiac when she was there, and her face is really alive with excitement. So it is a real buzz. And as part of our time here in this little corner of the Kimberley, we also explore the reason why these falls are here, the geology that underpins the whole experience. And again, there's lots of interesting wildlife. We were here earlier in the year and we saw rock wallabies just very close to the falls here. And we see a lot of bird life as well. So there's always multiple dimensions to what we do on our excursions. So there's always a bit of fun and a bit of excitement, but also some things you can learn and discover as well.
Yeah. And even in this image, Quentin, it's amazing to see just how big the tidal flows are. You can see the markings on the rock, and we visited the falls, the horizontal falls in the morning, and it was so calm. And then you go back in the afternoon and it's a different story, as you said, exhilarating. So yeah, pretty amazing part of the world.
That's right. And that's a real feature of the trip, is that rhythm of the tides that we all have to kind of get used to. And it's a real spectacle in itself. And the geology keeps on coming. And we also often visit one of these amazing folded formations in the Yampi Peninsula. This is a place called Nares Point. And you can see from the way those sedimentary layers have been folded almost around onto themselves, the power of the geology here. And these are ancient sedimentary rocks, over 1.8 billion years old. It's a bit of a head spin, but it's incredibly ancient geology. And that's a real feature of the whole journey that we do. And by the end of the trip, hopefully we've been able to explain how that all works, and why, for instance, these rocks have been folded and twisted and buckled and all of those sorts of things. And just to see it from the comfort and the security of the Explorer is great, because you get great photographs from the Explorer. We do go ashore often here to a beach just to the right of this image, and you get a chance to sort of really touch the rock and see the things up close and get some more photos. But yeah, the geology is a real feature for us. And again, another extreme. Now, not much geology here. These are very low slung islands, a coral and sand set of cays. And this is really a big wildlife highlight. And if the weather and tides are in our favour, we love going here. There's over 17,000 breeding pairs of these birds you can see in the photograph, the brown boobies, and they're wonderful characters. They come right up to our ship as we're getting close to the Lassipedes. And then when we go further in with the Explorers and also the Zodiacs, the birds continue to come around the vessel. Great opportunities for photographs, and just a really powerful indicator of the importance of these islands for wildlife. And as well as the boobies, we often see the lesser frigate birds here. We also see common noddies. lots of smaller wading birds. So for the birdos, this is kind of like the really big one. And as well as that, in the water, stingrays, sharks, fish, and turtles. So we all get used to sort of seeing turtles by the end of the trip, and they're very quick and elusive, but occasionally you can get a photograph of them bobbing their head up very quickly. But, you know, this is one of the really big turtle nesting areas in Western Australia, and we often see some of the younger turtles in the lagoons here. So it's just a real buzz, a great way for us coming from Darwin to finish on a real high with all this wildlife. So we've been talking about wildlife, and it is a real feature. We're coming into the whale season, so the humpbacks are gradually congregating, particularly around that area to the south of the Kimberley, in the Lassipedes and Dampier Peninsula area. But we see whales right through up until kind of the Prince Regent area, and there's no kind of rhyme or reason to it. One afternoon you'll just see 2 or 3 whales. These are humpbacks usually, coming close to the ship, and often there's some breaching and tail flapping and all that sort of thing. And so that's as we get further into July, August, and even September, the whales become a real feature of our journey. But as well as that, I've mentioned the bird life and also a lot of the marine life. And the crocodiles, we often see crocodiles, sort of 2-3 metre crocodiles in our travels. Occasionally we see some bigger ones, but even at 2 or 3 metres, these are very impressive animals and a real kind of sort of ambassador for what the Kimberley is about in terms of the habitat that's there and the wildness of the habitat as well. And there's great opportunities to see crocodiles not just in the water, but often they're on the mud banks, they're basking, catching a bit of morning sun, and also just resting up on the mud. So usually see quite a few crocs in our travels, and we have to be obviously very croc safe when we're out and about. When we're making a landing on a beach, we're very careful not to spend any time in the water. We're going straight ashore, so we're very conscious of croc safety. And then also, we also see a lot of birds, and we do enjoy some of the woodland birds as well. Some of the sites we visit, we get a chance to see some of the honey eaters, some of the smaller woodland birds, and even the rainbow bee eaters, this wonderfully coloured character on the left there. So yeah, it's just a very powerful experience. During the day, often the wildlife is a little bit less obvious because it's often quite warm. But if we're getting out in the evening or in the early morning, that's when the wildlife really is very obvious to us.
Great, thanks, Quentin. It certainly is a pretty amazing part of the world. I've done a lot of travelling around Australia and internationally, and you really just can't explain it until you've actually seen it in real life. It's a very, very amazing part of Australia and the world. And yeah, if you haven't been before, if you haven't booked, definitely put it on your bucket list. It's fantastic. So we're coming to the end of the webinar now. I do have one last video for you guys to watch. So we'll just recap those areas that we were just talking about. Again, we are, I believe, having some technical difficulties with our sound. So don't worry, it's just some music that you're missing out on in the background, but you'll still get to view the video, and then we'll go into some question and answer section at the end. All right, so we're going to start with questions. There is a chat section in the webinar, so feel free to pop your questions in the chat. I do have some already that some people have asked us previously, so we'll try and answer everybody's questions. If we don't happen to get to your question, you can contact our reservations team after the webinar if you think of something later on. There is a phone number on there for our reservations team, which is 1800 079 545, or there's an email address on there as well. And just for those that came in late, don't worry, because we have recorded this webinar today and we will send it out to everybody that has registered, and you'll get to watch it back, or you can share it with friends and family as well. But to kick off the question, Quentin, do you think there is any difference departing from Broome or Darwin?
Well, they're both good. I actually quite like going from Darwin, but my wife likes going from Broome. So we're sort of, so they both have great sort of opportunities. With the Darwin departure, you do have a day more or less at sea to get your sea legs and get used to the vessel and all of that sort of thing. So we do have a bit more kind of relaxed introduction. But from Broome, often we go to the Lassipedes and get straight into it from there. And really, you're going to see the same things. It's just in a different sequence. So I think from that point of view, both options are really great. I like whatever way they send me, I'll go there. So it's not really a tough choice at all.
Awesome. And we have had someone asked, is there an age limit? So in saying that, there isn't an age limit. However, as I mentioned, you do need to be reasonably fit and mobile. But Quentin, if you can tell us a bit about what people can expect on the shore excursions, you know, how far they're going to be walking and things like that.
Sure, and we do try to get people onto the land and into the kind of Kimberley itself.
Yeah. Ooh. I think we've just lost you there, Quentin. Okay, why Quentin's having some issues there. I'm not sure what's happened to his microphone. But yes, so reasonable level of fitness. The walks, as I mentioned before, can be, you know, the most that you're probably doing on the Kimberley is about 2 kilometres. It's quite flat. So apart from that, it's quite short distance walking. You're doing a lot of cruising in our Explorers. Just keep in mind, in the off chance that there is an emergency, you do need to be able to get up and down the stairs in our ships without using the lift. I have had someone ask, can you swim on this cruise? So not on our 10-night one. As Quentin mentioned, there are crocodiles, so we definitely don't recommend swimming. However, if you are going on our Rolly Shoals one, then yes, we do have that option because we're taking you out to the reef to snorkel out there. We don't have a dress code in the evenings, so just something that you feel comfortable in. Smart casual, that's fine. And oh, you're back, Quentin?
Yeah, no, the gremlins are gone.
Awesome. And then I just have, someone just asking about the recommended footwear again for the shore excursions. So Quentin, did you want to touch base on that one?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of people wear sort of fairly sturdy reef shoes or sandals. You don't want to wear thongs really. They're a bit tricky in terms of getting on and off the Explorer. So something which has got a little bit more support and a bit of an ankle strap is really good. And then if we're doing a slightly longer walk, if you're used to walking in walking shoes or boots, then we have the opportunity for you to change out of your wet landing shoes, and we have towels and so on. You can put on some socks and get your boots on. So whatever you're normally used to walking in is certainly recommended. But for a lot of our walks, you can probably get away with just your standard sort of reef sandals or you know, walking sandals. They're very good. A lot of people like a bit more of an enclosed toe on those sandals. So there's some pretty robust ones around now. And that's what a lot of the guest lecturers and expedition crew wear, just because it gives you a little bit more protection at the front of your feet. But yeah, apart from that, whatever you're used to walking in, we can facilitate that once you get ashore.
Yeah, and the crew do a really good job when we get up to a beach landing. Obviously, it can depend on the weather conditions, but most of the time you will find you just going onto dry land is just the off chance you'll be getting wet feet. But just keep that in the back of your mind in case it is a bit windy. So a few people are asking about walking poles. I would definitely recommend that, and I'm sure you would, Quentin, as well, as especially to the rock art sites, there's a little bit of unstable rocky conditions to walk on.
That's right. And if you like walking with poles, then certainly bring them. Ideally, they'd be sort of telescopic, so they can pack them down into your day pack if you need to. But they offer a great deal of support, and even on the beach, it's just a nice sort of thing to steady you as you're walking along. And in situations where you need more use of your hands, then sometimes you can just pass the poles to one of the expedition crew and they'll look after them. Or even if you just want to take one pole, as an example, that's often a pretty good solution as well. But yeah, walking poles are a really good idea. Some places not really necessary, but certainly on some of the rocky ground, it's very helpful to just keep yourself steady, and also just make that forward movement with the balance of a pole.
Perfect. Some people asking what to pack. So some things I'd recommend is just some lightweight clothing, especially a long sleeve shirt that protects you from the sun, because some of those shore excursions, they are in the afternoon where the Kimberley sun is starting to warm up. And then on a shore excursion, things like hat, sunscreen, water bottle. You will get a water bottle in your room that is included for everybody, and there's a water refill station as well. We do recommend drinking plenty of water on our trips. Binoculars, as Quentin and I suggested earlier. And there's snacks, plenty of snacks on board for you to take on the shore excursions as well. And then, Quentin, anything else you'd recommend to take on a shore excursion?
No, the water's the big thing, because
Yeah.
Even though we're all used to living in Australia, the Kimberley is a pretty hot place, and it's amazing how much water you do need. And so I've always got 2 water bottles actually. So
Yeah.
I love to have extra water with me. But yeah, water bottles are very important, and a really good hat. So. The sun is pretty strong, so I've got a wide brim hat, and I think that's super important.
Perfect. And with the shore excursions, if there is an excursion where you will get wet, so for example at King George Falls, if you choose to do the wet option and go right under the waterfall, we will provide towels as well. So you don't need to pack a beach towel, you'll get all that on board. And then I think we've got one last question here. Oh, is seasickness likely? So it was on my trip, we had a pretty reasonable, good trip, Quentin. It was pretty calm for us, even crossing the Gulf up to Darwin. However, we do have seasickness medication available on board, or you can take your own, and it is always recommended as a preventative as well. And most of the time when you're in the Kimberley region, we are in sheltered waters. However, Quentin, is there a particular time of year where you find it's a bit more rough on the water?
Not really. It just depends on the trade winds that come through in the dry season. So we get southeasterlies which come across the Joseph Bonaparte Gulf, and that can be a little bit choppy out there as we're getting across to the Kimberley itself, or coming back from the Kimberley to Darwin. So, but as you say, we've got preventative medicine on board that we encourage people to take if they do suffer from any seasickness. But that's really the only part of the journey there that we're likely to encounter any movement in the vessel. The rest of the time we're in quite sheltered waters, often between islands and harbours. And of all the places that coral go to, this is probably the smoothest journey they do. And the ships are just really well able to cope with rough weather, and very stable platforms. So we use these ships down in the Southern Ocean as well. So they're pretty seaworthy vessels. And in the old days, we had some smaller vessels which weren't quite so robust, but the newer ships are fantastic.
Yeah, times have changed. And I do have another question that just got in. So hair dryers. Yes, there are hair dryers provided in the rooms, and there are shampoo, conditioner, body wash and body moisturizer as well in very decent sized tubs as well that you'll find in your rooms. And you can get laundry done on board. That is an additional cost, but the purser will fill you in all about the details of that once you're on board the ship. Lots of questions coming at the end. So wine. Is wine provided with meals? So you will get selected wine, beer, soft drinks and selected spirits included with meal time, so at lunch and dinner, and then outside of those times. So if we're doing sunset drinks on the top deck or anything like that, you can purchase drinks on and those times. Okay, so that is all we've got time for today. You've had some fantastic questions, everybody. If you do have any more, that's totally fine. We've got our reservations number on there, 1800 079 545, and they would be more than happy to answer any of those questions that you might have. And there's also their email address on there as well, explore@coralexpeditions.com. But easy to pick up the phone, have a chat with our team here in Cairns. If you have booked already, you are going to have the most amazing time, and I'm very jealous. I wish I could be going back tomorrow. But if you haven't booked, guys, and you're interested, again, give our team a call. They'll be happy to give you a quote, fill in any other answers that you have to those questions of yours. And if anyone is interested in watching another webinar of ours, we have one on Papua New Guinea and Micronesia coming up next week, Wednesday, the 21st of June at 2 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And again, this webinar today has been recorded. We will send out a recorded version to everybody, so you can watch all of it if you joined in late. A very big thank you, so Quentin, your incredible knowledge of the region. It's absolutely amazing and mind-blowing, everything that you know about it. And yeah, it was a truly fascinating trip, and I'm glad that I had you on board. It was great. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabby. Yeah, and I can't wait to get back.
Yeah, lucky you. Well, thanks, everybody. And thanks so much, Quentin. And we look forward to seeing you on board. Thank you.